So this morning we had a big 30-minute Nintendo Direct for the next major Nintendo Switch game, Splatoon 3, and I thought it was awesome. So I wanted to run down what I thought were some of the highlights from this thing. Let's start with what has been my biggest problem with the previous Splatoon games, and that's a lack of content, specifically at launch. This is something I caught a lot of flack for when I did my video on Splatoon 2 when it first came out. I haven't looked at it recently, but I remember dislikes heavily outnumbered the likes because I said this kind of felt like a Splatoon 1.5. I felt like having it lack so heavily at the start, it didn't feel necessary. And like after, Splatoon 1 also, started with a little amount of content, built its way up to being a fairly substantial game, and then to see it just basically knocked back down to such a similar small starting point, I wasn't a fan of that. It's actually kind of funny because as I've been harping on the lack of content in a lot of these newer Nintendo sports games, I get a lot of comments, people being like, "Oh, well, why didn't you say this about Splatoon?" And it's like, because I did? I mean, if you didn't watch the video, then, what do you want me to do? But this is definitely this idea of a game, when I pay $60 for it, feel like a $60 game. That's something I've been consistent in. I do not want to pay $60 for a game that's going to feel like it's worth $60 a year, 2 years from now. I want it to feel like $60 the day of, and then, add to it and make it feel like an even better value over time. But I'm not trying to buy a game because it's going to be this great thing months, years down the line. This game is looking like it's going to have a much stronger launch than the previous titles. In terms of the standard maps, it will launch with 12. I think the first game ended with like 16 or something, so definitely a decent start. You've got a bunch of new maps as well as some returning old ones, which again is exactly what I said Splatoon 2 should have done at the start. Leverage more of all that Splatoon 1 stuff. Nothing wrong with doing that to ensure a wider variety of maps, especially again at launch. And in addition to the standard Turf War, you'll have 4 other game types at launch: Splat Zones, Tower Control, Rainmaker, and Clam Blitz. So I think that's a pretty good variety of stuff to start with in terms of the standard versus mode type game options. Same with the weapons. You got a lot of the standard fare you'd expect at this point, along with a lot of new stuff. The Splatana, I thought, looked like a lot of fun. Obviously, you swing it around like a sword, but you can charge it for some pretty long range attacks, and using that charge to just delete people at close range looked really satisfying. In the special weapons camp, I thought that Tacticooler looked interesting. It just spawns like a fridge full of G Fuel or whatever that gets passed out to your teammates and powers everybody up. But the highlight, I thought, of the whole weapons section had to be the Reef Slider, which spawns like a shark floaty, basically, that you ride on at your opponents. Then it explodes, covers the area in ink. I think we're going to see a lot of that special weapon because it looks so cool. And obviously, of course, as with past games, we're going to see more stuff added down the line with updates. They said with this game, the plan is to support the game for 2 years. As we've seen in the past, that could go longer with new maps, weapons, modes. They talked about the X Battle and League battles that are going to be added later for more hardcore players. Also, they teased large-scale paid DLC, which that both worries and excites me. It depends on how they do it. Locking things in a competitive game behind a paywall can be a big pain if it gives people who pay an advantage, or if it separates the player base with just, maps and stuff that they can't play. I think both of those things can lead to be a big issue. Players are also, again, they're expecting with this game to have a lot of stuff added for free. So, again, we'll have to wait and see what all these rollouts look like, what people are getting for free, what they choose to offer up as paid DLC. I don't want to, comment before we know really anything, but I think if we focus, at least at launch, it looks like the offerings are going to be substantial. Beyond even the standard versus play, you've got returning elements like the story mode and Salmon Run, which Salmon Run seems to have been beefed up pretty substantially. If you're not familiar, this is the co-op horde mode game type where you're fighting off waves of enemies. They're adding new bosses to it, a bunch more new bosses. Of course, as with the rest of these games, really interesting designs. The slamming lid I thought was funny. Looks like a cooking pot lid, but it moves like a flying saucer, drops enemies, and provides them with like a protective shield. There was the new King Salmonid Kohozuna, which is like a big kaiju type enemy that can spawn when you're near the end of a game to really add a bunch of chaos. Also, there's going to be a new version of this mode called Big Run, which they said this is only going to happen like once every few months, and it will involve the invasion taking place in the city. That looked like it could be a blast. I'm really excited to see more about that. The single player, the story mode, I think overall in these games is really underrated, especially the Octoling expansion in 2. Like, there are a lot of people who don't play any of the single player, any of the story mode stuff, even though they own the game. And yeah, it's typically really good. Not only are they like fun little challenge maps, but it's also a good way to learn the mechanics, learn how to use different weapons and gear and stuff like that. This is also where you'll be teaming up with the game's new hero, Small Frye, who is... God, I just love this design. He's getting an amiibo too. No joke, I am so hyped for that. I'll be picking up definitely 2, one to actually open and display and one to keep sealed. If you haven't played Splatoon and you're really not a big multiplayer versus guy, you can still surely get a good amount of fun out of the side stuff like this. I definitely wouldn't say it's worth buying, a Splatoon game just for, the single player, just for Salmon Run. But with them not just including this stuff, but kind of beefing it up, you could possibly, enjoy this with minimal of the versus type stuff. Speaking of these, offshoot things, there's also this card game getting introduced here, Table Turf Battle, where you're going to get these cards that are essentially splat patterns and deck build to go against other players. You take turns putting these patterns down and, covering each other's ink, like Turf Battle, but it's in card game turn-based form. I bet there's going to be some people who get really into this and perhaps even primarily play just this. There's going to be 150 cards at least from the start, so definitely some options there. Yeah, it's going to definitely be interesting to see how into that some people get. Now, the other thing I've been pretty critical about towards the Splatoon series is their overall lacking in basic online functionality. Like, these games have been lagging way behind other online shooters and needed a lot of quality of life improvements. This is something I kind of gave the first Splatoon a bit of a pass for because, this was Nintendo's first real foray into online shooters. But definitely with the second one, I was like, come on, we need to get some of this stuff in. And we are getting a bunch of the aspects I wanted in 3. Honestly, this is probably some of the stuff I'm most excited for, and it's crazy to think that in a game that's a 2022 release. But yeah, it's going to be easier to team up with your friends and play together as a team on the same team. You've got these ghosts now that will appear in your lobby that represent people that are on your friends list, and you can just go up to them, see what they're doing, and easily join them. I mean, what a concept. You can start and arrange your own stuff from here as well. Set up your group to either go online, do private matches of the different game modes. There's also a little training area where you can test out different weapons and abilities on dummies, and you can mess around here while you're waiting for games, people to join you, etc. You also have a photo mode as well as a match replay mode. You can view replays of matches as well as upload them to certain social media platforms. This stuff is great for people like me who, even though I have a capture setup, of course, for making my videos, typically for every 30 seconds of gameplay I have of me looking cool, I've got about another 17 hours of me sucking in the various games I play. So this will allow me to just go back and grab stuff where I don't look like an absolute total failure. Love to see it. Again, this is stuff that other games have been doing forever, and it's nice to see Nintendo catching up a bit. In terms of the customization, there's also a bunch of new stuff as well. Obviously, You've got your Inkling, their gear, and that, the stuff you've seen in the other games. You also have these splash tags that display your name, and you can customize them with different backgrounds, put titles and stickers on them. You can unlock different emotes for victory animations. They got the dab in there, so you can, style on the haters or whatever you kids do. And you also have this locker that you can fill with different stuff, items, again, stickers and that. And the lockers of people you recently played with show up in this specific area in the hub, so you can check out others as well as show off your own. Just another kind of fun feature to mess with and show off your personality a bit more. Again, one of those things that I guarantee you there will be people that spend a stupid amount of time perfectly placing all the stuff that they want in their locker. This is just stuff that happens. And of course, Splatfests are returning, but they're a little different. There are now 3 different teams for players to join for each Splatfest, represented by the 3 new idols. Yes, let's talk a little bit about Deep Cut, Frye, Shiver, and Big Man, he's just a big manta ray man. Already some controversy with these, unsurprisingly. Lots of people not a fan of Frye and Shiver. I think most people, myself included, love Big Man. I think he's a highlight. I think a lot of others also think he's a standout. I will say, I'm not a big fan of Frye and Shiver, really. Frye definitely has, that's a forehead, all right. But it's worth noting that, we went through this with Pearl and Marina as well. Many people were pissed to see them replacing Callie and Marie. And, by the end of the game, many ended up coming around to that duo. And at least we have the Big Man. I mean, again, I don't see anyone hating on Big Man. He's awesome. And for the first half, it will play out pretty much as others have in the past, where you're just matching against people from other teams in turf war, racking up points, and, your team is trying to get more than the others. But then in the second half of the Splatfests, you'll play in these tri-colored turf wars. 3 teams on the map. And in these, the team that's leading in the Splatfest will spawn in the middle with 4 players, and then there will be 2 from each of the other teams spawning on the 2 sides. So the team in the lead will be trying to hold off on the middle part and push themselves out, while the other 2 teams are kind of trying to collapse in on them. Definitely interesting. It seems like they're trying to do a lot to make the Splatfests, one, not end in a blowout, and also not have people from the same side fighting each other. This stuff, I think, will make things more interesting. Again, you could say, in the second half, if you have one team that's way more popular, dominating way more, well, when you do these turf wars, it's you're going to be able to put 4 people from that one team and also only have to get 2 from each of the other teams. So I can see that kind of balancing that stuff out a lot better. And the first Splatfest will be a part of a demo for the game on August 27th, and the Splatfest will be rock, paper, and scissors. I'm going to say, as they tease this, we got to see a little bit of the banter between the 3 hosts. I thought it was fun. I laughed at watching it. This stuff, these little charming elements are a highlight of the series for me. And I think, even if you're not a fan of, let's say, the design of these characters, I think that the interactions are still going to end up being fun. Obviously, us Big Man enjoyers, we're going to be Team Scissors. Rise up. Let's cut that confetti for our victory parade, boys. This is going to be nice to have a chance for people to check out the game right before it releases and see if they want to pick it up. I definitely encourage people to try it. You can't go wrong with a free demo. It's if you're interested in this game at all, you may as well check it out during this play period. And that's about it. Like I said, I thought this was an awesome direct. They're doing a lot of the things I've been wanting them to do with this series. Again, launching with a good amount of content, getting a lot of that quality of life stuff in there that's been desperately needed. At this point, I'm super excited to play this game. Let me know your thoughts on the Splatoon 3 Nintendo Direct in the comments. Did you enjoy what we saw here? Do you plan on picking up the game? What do you think of the new hosts, the idols? As always, I'm the Shy Guy, Johnny Zakari, and thanks for watching.